Hello, everybody. Welcome along to this English and literacy themed Twilight webinar, brought to you jointly by Somerset Research School and Cornerstone English Hub. By way of introduction, my name is Tom Colquhoun. I'm Director of Somerset Research School based at the Blue School in Wells. Michael?
Hello, yes, Michael Kimber. I'm the Hub Lead here at Cornerstone English Hub, and I'm based at Broadcliffe Primary School in Devon.
And Anne?
The primary evidence lead in education associated with Somerset Research School. And you can see I'm in my back bedroom in my Somerset house at this moment.
Thank you, Anne.
So I am a primary reading lead for a trust in South Gloucestershire and have an early years overview as well.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. So this afternoon we are looking to do these things for you to cover this content, an introduction to the bigger picture to start with, the EEF, the Research School Network, and the disadvantaged agenda, to then focus in on what's available to you in terms of support and resource from the EEF direct, but also the Research School Network more locally. Hand over to Michael to talk about the English Hub offer across the region, and then just finish off with some signposting specifically for secondary schools that are fairly hot off the press. So thanks for joining us. We'll get started. First of all, just setting in context, this event is taking place in what is the National Year of Reading, set up by the National Literacy Trust. Their theme is about going all in, and that's what we're hoping to do today. Just a reminder that that's happening. It's a big deal this year, and do engage with everything that National Year of Reading has to offer. So I'll start then with an introduction, probably a reminder for most people about the EF and the Research School Network. The EF is an independent charity set up in 2011 by the DFE with a significant amount of funding and have since facilitated, organised and funded an awful lot of good work in the English school system. More than 3 in 4 schools now have been involved in an EF funded trial or evaluation or project, and that's touched an awful lot of professionals and children in our schools. So a really good charity, but based in London, they can't do all of their work that they want to do from that one single point in the capital. The way they go about doing their work is a three-pronged approach. The first is to recruit and organise and fund more trials and evaluations to take place in the English school system. So they get schools to test out approaches, to report back, and so that we in the system can know what seems to be effective and, importantly, what isn't. But once that's been done, it's important that the heavy lifting is done for us in terms of the synthesis of the information that's generated. Most of us in schools are way too busy and don't have the capacity to read lengthy, complicated research reports. So we like things like the toolkits and the evidence reviews and summaries that the EF produce. But even once that synthesis has been done, unless we then mobilise that evidence and those recommendations and get them to the schools, get them to the chalk face effectively, it's no use to anybody. And that's where the Research School Network kicks in. 33 different research schools that have been accredited across the English school system. And if we zoom in a little bit on the southwest, which is where we're hosting this afternoon, we've got 5 offerings, if you like, in the southwest region. So Cornwall Research School is based at Mounts Bay Academy, a secondary school down in Penzance. You've got Devon Research School, which is actually in Kingsbridge, at Kingsbridge Community College there. You've got Hampshire Research School, which is at Front Lawn Primary Academy, just near Portsmouth. You've got Gloucestershire Research School up at Rowanfield Junior School in Cheltenham, and then you've got us at Somerset Research School, slap bang in the middle. And all of us have this strap line, which is about providing school-led support for evidence-informed practice. Wherever we are in the country, in the region, that's what we're trying to achieve. So the mission from the EF, and therefore the Research School Network's mission, because we are funded and supported by the EF, is there for you on the screen. I'll pause for a moment to let you read that. So right at the heart of the mission there is this big challenge on the very stubborn attainment gaps that exist in this country and in fact across the world. It's just not fair that if you happen to be a child born into a particular family in a particular postcode, particular area, you are statistically less likely to do well in school and therefore in life. So the EEF's and the Research School Network mission is about challenging those attainment gaps through the better use of evidence, evidence-informed practice. Just setting the scene in terms of the disadvantage state of play, we're going to reference here the Education Policy Institute's annual report from 2025, which in itself looks at and summarises the data from the summer of 2024. The shape of this graph here, which is showing the size of the gap in months for the earliest foundation stage, so reception assessments here, shows a really sharp reduction in the size of the gap, really pleasing reduction in the size of the gap from 2013 through to 2017. But even pre-pandemic, we saw a significant uptick. And then with school closures and all of the disruption there through COVID, we saw a very significant increase in the size of the gap again, back up to 2022. A slight positive note there through to 2023, but again an increase in the size of the gap in 2024. So similar story for Key Stage 2 data, so Year 6 SATs, and here we have from a 4.7 month gap in reception classes, a 10-month gap nationally in 2024, and then for Key Stage 4, so Year 11 GCSE results, again a similar shape graph with a move back to where we were about 10 years ago in terms of attainment gaps of disadvantaged children. So by Year 11, by GCSE time, children nationally 19.1 months behind if they're from a disadvantaged starting point compared to their more advantaged peers. So those are the national stats. Just for reference, the Southwest statistics are slightly more sombering, 4.9 months in the early years, 12.5 months, so over a year behind in Year 6 SATs in the Southwest, and not far off 2 years behind in Year 11 when it comes to GCSE outcomes. So the gaps are stark, they are real, and they are a challenge which we need to face head on. We do that then by trying to become more informed by the growing body of good evidence that's out there. But let's just firstly just firm up what we mean and what we understand by the word evidence and evidence informed. This guide from the EEF is a useful, handy, concise guide to using research evidence. There's a really nice definition there about the types of evidence that are out there for us to use. The first column there suggests that research evidence from structured formal studies and trials and evaluations is really important. It's probably the most robust that we've got. But we mustn't forget the middle column there, which is around the school-based or internal data, which schools generate themselves through their own assessments, their own student and pupil voice, conversations and so on. Where something's been trialled, it's been evaluated properly, we can make judgments based upon that. And of course, on the right there, that's the other sources of information are growing by the month, aren't they? There's an awful lot out there to read and to be influenced by, I suppose. We just need to take all of it, but especially that on the right with a little bit of pinch of salt. So what is the role of evidence? Well, as I say, the evidence base is growing in scale and in quality. And we've got tools like the EEF Toolkit, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. We've got guidance reports with specific, practical, actionable recommendations, things to try and do in your classrooms. And then we've got other guides, which are helpful in very specific scenarios or with specific bits of strategy in your school. So lots of resource, all of which are available from the EEF for free to download whenever you are ready. If you want guidance reports, in this part of the region, you go to your local research school, you saw the map earlier, and we can get those hard copies to you. So do get in touch if that's the case. So just pointing you back towards the Teaching and Learning Toolkit, it's sort of the flagship resource of the EEF, set up pretty much as their first offering back in 2012, 2013 by a number of important people, but Rob Coe, Lee Elliott Major and colleagues at Durham University. And what this does, it tries to summarise in a really accessible form around 40 different approaches or strategies that schools take. And it rates them 3 ways: by cost per pupil head, strength of evidence base there with the padlocks, and then potential impact in terms of additional months progress. And each of those you can click on and get an awful lot of extra detail. Bearing in mind we're thinking about literacy and English approaches this afternoon, I pulled out just a couple. So reading comprehension strategies, if you were to click on that, you get much more detail, but here you'll see really good bang for your buck. £1 sign, so it's cheap. 4 padlocks, so there's good strong evidence base. And what this suggested, the aggregated effect size suggests that you could potentially see an additional 6 months of progress in one academic year on average. Very much the same for phonics, again, cheap. Again, very strong evidence base, an additional 5 months of progress moving forward. So what are the key resources that I would propose that you as an education person should know about from the EF, but there is more. And at this point, I'll hand over to Anne, who's going to talk us through some of the other resources that are out there from the EF.
Thank you, Tom. Yes, and I'm just going to mention here the blogs that come from those working across the EEF and the research school. And they cover all elements of learning and all key stages. But essentially, they are the perfect marriage of research evidence and practical experience. The challenges and the successes. And it's sometimes just lovely to read about some successes, isn't it? I think in the environment we're working in. And I just wanted to pick up a couple as examples there that the Somerset Research School have recently posted. The head of English at the Blue School, related to the National Year of Reading, was looking at their use of library. And a sentence that made my heart sing: the library has become a voluntary hub rather than a mandatory destination. You know, just magic. And I'm not going to spare James's blushes. As you will see there, James has written a talk first, closing the early literacy gap in the early years. And a really important sort of strapline for James on talk was that it is deliberate, equitable, precise, and cumulative. And why I also have raised that one, apart from it being an excellent read, is that please don't just go to your own key stage when you're looking at the blogs, because that term that they're deliberate, equitable, precise, and cumulative, our language interactions with children would apply wherever. So that message, I think, to your colleagues, broaden it beyond your own key stage. Then helpful that there is a really strong link now attached to a second resource that I wanted to mention, which is clips from the classroom. They again go across the whole curriculum, but you can see there are 38 clips connected with literacy. They essentially are clips of 5, 6, 7 minutes. And what they include are teachers talking to camera, giving the background explanation, but then you actually see that theory in practice in their classrooms. There are also always questions for reflection that are posed alongside them, and a further reading section, which gives you a direct link to the relevant blogs associated to the topic and to the guidance reports. And it will not only take you to the literacy guidance reports, but it'll take you to the connected reports such as special educational needs in the classroom or the deployment of teaching assistants. So you have the clips themselves, but then you also have that reference point to other useful materials, whether that be the guidance reports or the blogs, so that if you were wanting to use them for your CPD, you have got it all to hand in that way. Just a few of the examples up on your screen now. And you can see that this term fluency is everywhere in literacy at the moment. I think it began in our heads, didn't it, with fluency for reading, but it's absolutely at the heart of oracy and writing as well. But the other reason for these photos, I can't let it pass that even a photograph generates helpful discussion. Those of us on the screen, which I suspect is all of us, who have literacy at their core, are probably a little bit twitchy, like me, about two of those photographs connected to handwriting. But my goodness, what a useful conversation could be had from just those photographs. James.
Yeah, so that brings sort of onto the guidance reports. Obviously, they'll be linked in all the blogs anyway, so you can follow them through. But I'll just go through what some of them show you, and a couple other little bits as well. So you've got, I'll go through improving literacy, preparing for literacy, sorry, in the early years, and improving literacy in Key Stage 1. So kind of looking at them, they all come packed with lots and lots of information, strategies, which use with the toolkits and the blogs and clips from the classroom. We'll put it into practice for you so you can actually see what they look like. Going on to the first one is preparing for literacy. Gives you lots and lots of areas to dive into, but the main overview in this one, really, in this guidance report, is the message running through all of it is that communication and language have to come first. The guidance highlights 7 main areas there. They all prioritize language and communication, developing early reading in a balanced way, supporting children's early writing, embedding opportunities to develop self-regulation, helping parents in learning at home, and using high quality assessment and then giving that targeted support to the children, particularly those who are struggling, again, trying to make it equitable for everyone. I think the overall message here is about building those strong foundations rather early and actually consolidating as well. I think a lot of us have that pressure and try to rush off ahead. One of the things it kind of talks about, which is a big focus at the moment, is the Shrek approach. This really gives a simple overview and a memorable way for everyday adult interactions. Shrek stands for shared attention, respond, expand, and conversation. In practice, that means getting alongside the children and having those conversations. Whatever the child is focusing on, whatever they're doing in it, and whatever they're saying to is responding immediately to them. And building on what they say about adding language. I think a big assumption a lot of the time is to try and direct that language or push it in a particular direction, particularly when you're going in and you're just seeing an adult sat with a child. It's making sure it's enriching. And again, there's lots and lots of really good videos linked to that when you go onto it and have a look. One of my favorite ones is when they talk about the orange and the adult goes, "Oh, it's zesty." And it's like, what a wonderful word to use. Like, how often do they use that? And then they go on to put it into context for them. And then it's then trying to build that sustained thinking as well. That's got early talk boost. It's a research project currently done. I won't go too much into it because you can see it all on the screen there. But essentially, it's a targeted intervention designed for children, that a little extra support in talking and understanding words, so they can better access the early years foundation curriculum. So those who haven't got the language or a late bloomer, it's a really good resource to dive into, sort of research the background of it, and see how it could be applied practically. It also supports the wider development in social development, mathematics. I think what's important is it's been developed by specialists and informed by evidence again, and it's already shown to have lots of early promise in children's language. Yeah. So that brings us to the early years evidence store. This has got lots and lots of practical resources for staff. It's a real benefit when you're kind of go through it and you're seeing stuff written down and it's talking to you the guidance reports of what they are, actually diving into it and saying, oh, that's an example of how they've looked at the guidance report and they've built something from it, and the research from it. So it brings together the informed approaches across different areas, including communication, language, personal, social, and emotional development. Literally maps all the areas. And one of the strengths of the evidence store is that it doesn't just present theory, it also includes explicit practices and examples, which kind of talked about earlier. So you can see what the strategies are like, strategies like naming and labeling, explaining and showing, or repetition actually look like in the early years. And that makes it really useful to bridge those gaps between research and classroom practice. And then Key Stage 1, literacy. So the main recommendation from the EEF on this one in Key Stage 1 is the recognition includes developing on speaking and listening. So you spend all that time preparing for literacy in early years, now it's building on it. Using a balanced approach to reading and implementing systematic phonics effectively, teaching pupils to learn to write, and developing fluent transcription, which I know there's a lot of focus on at the moment, and then using that high quality formative assessment, providing interventions from there. One of the key messages you'll see here, language provides the foundation of thinking and learning and should be prioritized. The diagram here shows how it helps that writing depends on several connected elements. Children need text generation skills, so the ideas, words and sentences, but they also need those transcription skills like spelling, typing, handwriting, as well as executive function skills. Work and memory sits in the center of it. So the key takeaway really is when a child is struggling with their writing, it may not just be down to spelling in isolation. It may reflect on several other areas, for example, their text generation or their transcription. So just trying to look at a broader approach to their writing opposed to just going, oh, it must be spelling. Could be a bit of cognitive overload going on there. And that brings us to reading comprehension. I think this shows it's not simply about, particularly in Key Stage 1, decoding words. I think there's so much emphasis on the phonics at the moment, particularly in Year 1. And it kind of tails off again massively in Year 2. You spend all that time in Year 1 working on it, then in Year 2 you're going to go, right, now let's just rush into fluency. But it's looking at it all together. So decoding words isn't the only bit. It's all about the understanding of language, either what depends on reading it orally as well, I think is a big part of it, if they don't have that understanding of language. On one side, there are word reading skills such as decoding, recognition, fluency, and it underpins all those things like phonological awareness and print. On the other side, it brings together their language and comprehension, which includes inferencing, comprehension, and monitoring, text structure, and grammar, semantics, and vocabulary. The message here is that reading comprehension develops when all these elements are taught and supported together. This is where the phase of evidence into action really matters, and using what research tells us in a practical way. I think, particularly across both key stages, we tend to do a lot in Year 1 around word reading and that phonological awareness, and there's a lot of temptation to jump to language comprehension. You get into Year 2, and that what they always say is bridging the gap between Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2. But it's remembering to get a whole complete reader. It's taking both parts and continuing both. I think I'm going to hand back over to Anne.
Thanks very much, James. Yes, and I'm now going to take us into the Improving Literacy in Key Stage 2 document. Importantly, exactly the same threads as we have just seen in Foundation Stage and Key Stage 1. We have spoken language, we have the components of reading in the yellow there, and we then have the two components of writing and assessments and high quality interventions. So exactly the same elements. And I think it's really important that those of us leading English literacy in schools make sure we've got the overview of all of the guidance documents, because there are key threads that are exactly the same. And for your practitioners as well, if they are working in Key Stage 1, but really strong children in their Year 2, do go into the Key Stage 2 document. And obviously in reverse, those of your colleagues working at Key Stage 2, it is worth looking at Key Stage 1 for those children who might not be as far along as we might hope. Hurrah! Developing pupils' language capabilities is still recommendation 1. And I'm hoping that is not by accident, because as James said, it is the absolute bedrock. And why we have had to wait for the oracy framework to be number 3 is quite beyond me. But it's coming. And again, that will be something to absolutely align with the guidance reports. As it says on the slide there, it mentions high quality dialogue in the classroom. And that very much relates to the whole approach of our classrooms being dialogic classrooms. And a key message that they make is that's not just a dialogic classroom, pupil and teacher, it's pupil to pupil and the supporting materials that are there. And it all from the evidence, those names of Robin Alexander, Neil Mercer, which I'm sure are familiar to many of you, and then as up to date as it can possibly be. The vocabulary is also a strand in that first recommendation, and the Isabel Beck work on tiers 1, 2, and 3 are fundamental to the supporting guidance that is there, but again has been mentioned in the earlier reports for Key Stage 1 as well, and indeed Foundation Stage. The two recommendations on reading are support pupils to develop fluent reading capabilities, and teach reading comprehension strategies through modelling and supported reading. And that is centred on what James had introduced to you in Key Stage 1, that fluency comes from accuracy, automaticity, and prosody, and that this in turn enables comprehension. The guidance report very much builds on the evidence of the importance of rereading, and indeed gives examples that practitioners can use, such as readers' theatre. There is practical support throughout the guidance report. There are other supporting materials that are not directly in the guidance report, but support what is there. And examples that a lot of schools I know have already found useful are these misconception myth buster sheets. The examples on the screen there are for reading fluency and for vocabulary. As I say, so much of this is very supportive of your CPD. Just wanted to pull out two from the reading comprehension as stimulus for conversation. For example, myth 7 in fluency is cited as fluency practice is not appropriate for older pupils. And that opens up the whole discussion about the fact that in essence, you don't become a fluent reader per se. Fluency is about the text that you are being asked to read. Hopefully, the guidance reports are written in such a way that you can be a fluent reader straight away, and I believe they are. Myth 6 in fluency. Fluency practice is best suited to fiction texts. That is debunked in terms of it's not just fiction texts, it's all texts, but it picks up on the important point that picking the right text is crucial. It should be motivating, challenging, and diverse. And again, there are practical pointers within the guidance report. For example, in the recommendation on reading, there is guidance on supporting text choice that covers knowledge, structure, meaning, language, and themes. So time and time again, supportive practice. James has already mentioned the simple view of writing, and that again, rightly, is in Key Stage 2. There are vignettes throughout the guidance reports, examples of practice in classrooms. And in recommendation 4, which is talking about composition, there is a vignette of a Year 3 classroom where the teacher has been asked to do more periods of extended writing. They have dutifully done more periods of extended writing. But unfortunately, it hasn't gone that well. And indeed, some parents are citing that their children are even becoming anxious on the days when they know they've got to do an extended write. But how that is tackled in the report is, so let's think about this, questions for discussion. And it starts with that basic fundamental question, why is writing so challenging? And acknowledging that it is. And that takes us back into the simple view of writing. And the delight that there is a professor in America who is called Ronald Kellogg. I just think that combination of Ronald McDonald and Kellogg cereals is just wonderful. Vocabulary. It is absolutely at the heart of our support for writing at the moment, of acknowledging the challenge of writing. And Alex Quigley, who is a name that many of you will know, and I hope you know him from his work with the EEF as well, is very, very strong on this. And do go and listen to him in the Evidence in Action blogs he's done and so on the website. And around writing, he is making the point that an extended piece of writing is like running a marathon. And that mirrors, doesn't it, what we've come through so strongly in the writing framework for younger children. We should not be asking them to write before they have got sufficient basic transcription skills to enable that to happen. So not asking them to do extended pieces of writing time and time again, completing the marathon without giving them all of the elements that are going to enable that extended piece of writing to be completed. And the analogy that Alex Quigley makes is all the little sprints that build up the marathon runner, all the smaller elements that might not even happen on the running track, but will enable that marathon to be completed in the end. And that is strong as we move into the secondary guidance report. They, again, have the strands that we have seen earlier in the 3 documents we have already looked at. They have reading, writing, vocabulary underpinning the 2, and then the opportunities for structured talk appears as the talk strand as they go through. They talk very much about the complex tasks of reading and writing in terms of being asked to write complex academic texts and complex reading tasks, but it is the same supporting breakdown of the skills that enable it. Within the reading, they talk about strategic readers, the activating prior knowledge, the prediction, the questioning, the clarifying, the summarizing. But they're also making the point, and it's there as number 1, that they would be prioritizing disciplinary literacy across the curriculum. And again, I think that is an example of don't only look at the guidance report for your Key Stage. As a Key Stage 2 practitioner, we are all teaching disciplinary literacy really very explicitly by that stage as well. And it might well be helpful for your Key Stage 2 colleagues to look at what is suggested there. Whereas in contrast, the Key Stage 2 guidance report is supporting all of your teachers because you are all teachers of literacy in your subject, and they make the point that by supporting your teaching of reading and writing, you are supporting the learning in your subject. So the guidance report on literacy is for everybody in the secondary school, not just the English department as it goes through. Thanks, Tom.
Thank you very much, Anne. So that's a whistle-stop tour of the headlines from the 4 different EEF guidance reports. A heads up from me is that the EEF have a mission to try and consolidate some of the guidance reports to review and update the recommendations, and might be looking at a consolidation and a smaller number of guidance reports that are more relevant and up to date. So watch this space on that. But alongside the literacy or English specific guidance, there is also this guidance report from the EEF around implementation, and whatever the approach you end up taking, whether it's rolling out a new phonics program or thinking about reading for pleasure in a secondary school, whatever it is that you're going for, How you go about doing that's hugely important, and I'm just flagging that this guidance report has a full set of recommendations here. One is around the behaviours that we want to see that enacted in schools by all sorts of stakeholders, actually, in the blue circle there. So we want people engaged, we want people united with shared understanding and knowledge, and also being reflective in that implementation effort. We need to be considering on the left there the contextual factors. So the what is important, making sure it's an evidence-backed approach or strategy, thinking about the practicalities and the systems and structures that are in place, timetables, resources, funding, and so on. But crucially, thinking about people and the teams and the effort of those teams to be successful and effective in the implementation effort. And lastly, the third recommendation is around the structured but flexible process of explore, prepare, deliver, and sustain. So there's full details on all of those recommendations, hugely important to any implementation effort, worth knowing about and being ready to share. So 5 guidance reports from, oh, sorry, Anne, you look like
so I was just going to interrupt it. I so loved Alex Quigley's marathon and sprint analogy. What a perfect analogy for this as well. Sorry.
Absolutely, yeah. All the
never over-egg a good analogy.
Exactly, and all those small actions build up to a fantastic implementation effort overall. Another signpost from the national network. You saw the map earlier. 33 different research schools. Lots of training and support on offer. Clearly, you can filter by literacy at the top here in terms of themes. You'll see some of the things that have happened recently, including this one right now. But you'll also see things that are coming up, and you'll actually notice on this particular selection I've displayed here, all of these events are online. So it doesn't matter that the research school is in North London. You can access this training and support remotely through your devices. So that's the summary of EEF and Research School Network offer, if you like, in the region. I'm now going to hand over to Michael, who will talk about some of the practical support that's on offer through the English Hub programme in this part of the region. Over to you, Michael.
Thanks very much, Tom. So, yes, I'm from the Cornerstone English Hub, but I want to reiterate here that everything I'm about to tell you is on offer from pretty much every English Hub across the country. So if you are from a school in England, you can access this support, and wherever you're watching from, if you're not sure who your local English Hub is, you can reach out to me. My email address is in the slides towards the end here, and I'm very happy to signpost your local English Hub to you. It's likely a lot of schools have already got a contact in an English Hub, so I'd encourage you, if you hear something that sounds tantalising in a moment, then reach out to your contact, and as I say, reach out to me if you're not sure. So the aims of the English Hub have always been these. We look to make sure that schools have got a really well embedded phonics program at the heart of their early language development, that they're teaching that with fidelity, and we're here to support you to achieve that as well. We'll come on to some of the support we can offer in a moment, but that's a really core thread of our offer. We're also here to support you with that love of reading and making sure that you're embedding and fostering a positive reading culture all the way up through your school, whether it's early years, moving through the rest of the phases, really. And then finally, I've mentioned early language development within phonics, but also thinking about some of those challenges around delayed language, which I know an awful lot of schools are facing at the moment, and we're expanding our offer there as well. Now, our support is free. A lot of it is funded. We're here to support you. We're not here to kind of get any money off you. We're here to give you funding wherever we possibly can to ensure that all of your efforts are supported in every way possible. So there's a bit of a process that schools go through. We like to see a bit of engagement from schools in the first instance, and depending on which hub you're working with, there might be a slightly different flavour to this. But a lot of schools will come to a showcase event at one of the hub schools, and you'll be able to see phonics in action in that school, some of those strategies that are underlying the curriculum. And then we can come to you, and we can spend some time in your school speaking to your teachers, speaking to your leaders, and understanding what's going well, maybe what you want a bit of support with. We're not there in an inspectorial capacity, but we're here to work alongside you and establish how we can work with you, how we can fund you. And that funding at the moment goes towards your phonics program. So that could help buy resources or help to buy training. And that funding can be up to £6,000. So if you haven't had £6,000 from an English hub, do get in touch as soon as you can. Some schools who we feel we can really make an impact with, we then can go further with you. We can give you across a couple of years up to 12 days of support, which I'll come to in a minute. But big news for us. We've been, the hubs have existed since about 2018. And in all of that time, our focus really has been on phonics and Key Stage 1. But as you can see at the bottom of the slide there, in September, things are getting shaken up really quite a bit. We are going to have an offer for early years, for Key Stage 1, for Key Stage 2, and following a really successful pilot this year, Key Stage 3 as well. So we're really excited. We don't actually ourselves have all the details on it yet, but on the next slide here, what you'll see is for us at Cornerstone, we've set up a web page as a QR code that you can scan there, which enables you to just inquire about that support. You can pencil in a visit from us. All of the information we've got essentially is on that slide, on that web page. Again, I'm not necessarily saying you need to come to Cornerstone for that support, but if you do request support, then we can either offer that support or we can signpost you to your most local hub. So really excited about that. Hopefully there'll be funding, there'll be opportunities just like there has been within the phonics sphere. And yeah, we'd love to onboard you, get to know you within the capacity of Key Stage 2, for instance, even if you've worked with us already in a Key Stage 1 phonics sort of realm. So when we offer support, we will often come in and do an audit. And that is a day where we spend time, as I say, working with your team. We actually pay you a little bit of money for letting us through the door, just as a little thank you, a bit of a backfill contribution. And we're there to identify that good practices, to spot the next steps, and actually to work out how much we can help you with those next steps as well. So we've got capacity to do certain things. We can't do everything for you, but we are keen to help you as much as we can. For those schools where we do see that opportunity to work with you more intensively, as you can see here, we can offer you up to 12 visits over a couple of years. After the 2 years, you enter what we call a graduated year, a third year, where we've got more light touch support with you, but we'll invite you to some events. We'll kind of keep touch with you in a lighter touch way to make sure you are supported. Now, for real transparency, we become sort of accountable a little bit for your data with the DFE. So we report on how we're helping you support your phonics outcomes. So we're invested in you. We want you to succeed. And whilst we don't have the detail on how that transfers across to Key Stage 2, early years or Key Stage 3 quite yet, that will be the same level of invested in you as we are with Key Stage 1. There's other things we can do though. So if you're a school that's everything's going quite well, you don't feel you need that intensive support, and maybe you want a bit of funding, but you don't need much more than that. We run at the moment 4 programs, that is expanding, but watch this space on that. So the 4 programs we run are around supporting early language development. There's one around your reading culture. There's one called Reading Ambition for All, which is largely around SEND and how children who have SEND are able to access the phonics provision, access your reading provision in school, and making sure they are included. And of course, then reading fluency. And a lot of schools do face a bit of a challenge between year 2, 3, that key stage transition there. So that's there to support you with that. Again, this is all primary focus in the first instance, but our offer, as I've said, is expanding into Key Stage 3 and secondary. So again, keep your ears to the ground and we'll be in touch with more opportunities. They are your local hubs. As I said, my email address is there on the slide, so just reach out to me if you're not sure, and I will put you in touch with your local hub. We work as a big team. Our offers are not identical, but very, very similar. So whatever you get from one, you'll probably be able to get from the others. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. That's all I've really got to say. So thank you very much. And I'd love to hear from any schools that are interested. Thanks, Tom.
Brilliant. Thank you, Michael. Certainly, from a secondary perspective, it's exciting to hear about those developments. And we look forward to hearing a little bit more as we go forward into next academic year. So I just thought I would share one or two more signposts before we finish off. The first is some resources direct from the DFE, which we're really pleased to be involved in piloting, actually. So there's some real interest for us in terms of Blue School. You will find all of this, again, free to access, free to download from the DFE's website. It's called Supporting Reading in Secondary Schools. This is about universal provision, supporting reading generally for all learners. And yes, there is some kind of text-based guidance. There are a couple of handbooks here, one for school practitioners, one for school leaders. But what's really good here are the series of YouTube videos which are available as a suite there to view and to use, however you see fit in terms of your own training, professional development in your own school settings. Clearly, secondary settings here as a focus. So that's the first one. That's been out for almost a year now. There's some really good, high-quality stuff, mainly pulled together by Professor Jessie Ricketts from Royal Holloway. There's some really fantastic content there, already available and ready to go. The second then is on unlocking reading, which is much more hot off the press. It's about to go live and it's called Unlocking Reading. This is much more about supporting struggling readers in secondary schools. We know now that around 25% nationally, around 25% of children arriving into Year 7 classrooms are below the age-related expectations with their reading. And so the job of the secondary school teacher, through the disciplinary literacy lens anyway, is to support many more children who are struggling with their reading. So what we have here is an introductory video, which we're sharing the link, which we put out afterwards, explaining the programme. But watch this space. Some face-to-face and some online training available with supporting resources on a shareable platform. So more info coming soon. That's about to be launched any day now. So worth knowing about those two extras and the additional support on offer from English Hubs for the secondary colleagues watching today. So let's finish off with a reminder that we would like you to stay in touch. Having watched this 40 minutes or so today, we would like you to be in touch, and there are a couple of QR codes to get in touch with the English Hub on the left there, the blue one, and the Research School on the right. But both of us have explained that we are part of a wider regional and national network, and we can access and bring to you in the region some really good people, some really good resource, and some really good support. So I hope you've taken that message away with you today. I'd like to say thank you to you for watching and for listening. I'd also like to say thank you to Anne and to James and to Michael for contributing today. I hope that's been useful and has prompted some thinking, provoked some thought, and has signposted you some really good resources out there. Thank you ever so much for listening, and have a good rest of your day.